My name is Alex Parsons. I'm a freshman here at Mount, and I'm a math major with a focus on education. So my topic was M-butterfly stereotypes. And my thesis is that in M-butterfly, David Henry Hwang uses the view of the East and West to reveal the gender stereotypes present in society. My main points, first is the views of the East and West during this time period, so more of like the cultural stereotypes and how that relates and correlates the male and female in the East and West, which kind of gets more into the gender stereotypes. So talking about how cultural stereotypes and gender stereotypes are pretty much related to each other because different cultures have different roles for men and women. For instance, some cultures see women differently. For instance, some are considered like sacred in some, and some are greatly mistreated in others. And then my last 2 points are kind of how Song uses this ideology against Gallimard and to kind of get him to buy into their relationship, and also Gallimard's reaction to the reversal of the cultural stereotype. The views in the East and West. The West kind of represented strength, power, and a more dominant figure, where the East represents weakness, delicacy, and more submissive. From John Louis DeGattoni, he actually had a chance to sit down and talk to Hwang. He's from MIT, and he interviewed him talking about the East and West and how they play, how their attitudes towards each other played into the play and how the criticisms he took. So Hwang himself actually said, yes, that's true, the play has been taken as a commentary or a criticism of the Western attitudes towards the East, and I think that's accurate. But I would like to think that the play is fairly even-handed in saying that the East is also misperceives the West. The East is guilty or complicit in this dual form of cultural stereotyping. The West, having had the advantage of being the colonial power and of being the more powerful of the two over the past couple of hundred years, has an attitude of condescension towards the East. But the East has played up to that and to its short-term advantage without thinking of the long-term ill effects that reinforcing those racial stereotypes causes. I think both parties are equally guilty. So here he's kind of talking about how even though the West has kind of taken on that power role and seemed like the more dominant figure, the East is just as much to blame because they've fallen into that role of the submissive figure. Next is the shift of cultural to gender stereotypes. The West is seen as more masculine, whereas the East is seen as feminine. And in the actual story, Hwang says the West thinks of itself as masculine, big guns, big industry, big money. So the East is feminine, weak, delicate, poor, but good at art and full of inscrutable wisdom. The feminine mystique. Even in the characters you see, like Gallimard is from the West, so he's the man, and Song, before we know that he's a man, is the woman in the relationship, and he is from the East. Showing that the West is kind of seen as like the powerhouse, and the East has nothing really to offer except for art and wisdom, but Song uses his wisdom from the East to kind of reverse the stereotype and use it against Gallimard. Song's use of Eastern and Western ideology. Song uses Gallimard's Western views against him. One big quote from the play that's big is when Song is having a conversation with Miss Chin and says, "Miss Chin, why in the Peking opera are women's roles played by men?" And Chin says, "I don't know, maybe a reactionary remnant of a male." And Song replies by saying, "No, because only a man knows how a woman is supposed to act." Kind of showing how each of them have stereotypes of men and female. So like, because Song is a man, he knows how a woman is supposed to act, but also how a man wants to be treated, since he knows what he wants. And then I have a longer quote from one of my sources. that says, He's Madame Butterfly helps to consolidate the notion of white male dominance and the Oriental woman stereotype China doll. Long demonstrates the biased image through a white male's Gallimard soliloquy. This one, Gallimard says, "There is a vision of the Orient that I have, of slender women in Tong-San-Sing kimonos who die for the love of unworthy foreign devils, who are born and raised to be the perfect woman, who take whatever punishment we give them and bounce back, strengthened by love unconditionally. It is a vision that has become my life." Long makes it fairly clear that the vision which incites and determines his love is in fact fantasy, an illusion. And this is from Whelan and in the Politics of Gender. And pretty much it's just talking about how Gallimard's Western views, he has a view of how a Orient woman should be, and Song kind of steps in and fills that role for him. And Gallimard was really never a manly man before, so when he does receive the control that he believes he has over Song, he jumps at it and plays into it. And he kind of is describing the woman as like almost being like a piece of meat kind of for the taking, and like the women will take whatever he gives to them, like how he talks about whatever punishment we give to them, like kind of demeans women in a way. And then the result is Gallimard's reaction. Towards the beginning he talks about his idea of an Orient, and towards the end he also talks about his idea of an Orient woman again, and he pretty much keeps his same views. So he says, "I have a vision of the Orient, that deep within its almond eyes there are still women willing to sacrifice themselves for a love of a man, even a man whose love is complete without worth." Showing kind of that Gallimard won't give up his stereotypes. At this point, he himself has become that representation of the submissive feminine East. So he's still keeping his stereotypes, but has fallen back to his feminine-like ways as society would describe them. And Song and Gallimard are kind of both products of their culture. Therefore, they play along with these stereotypes, which ultimately leads to like Song revealing it in Song's trial, and then Gallimard killing himself because Gallimard can't live as a man anymore. And therefore dresses up to die as a woman, like in the play M Butterfly, because he believes in that so greatly. And those are my sources. Thanks.
Very good, Alexis.